For about 2 centuries, a handful of European nations set out on one of the most incredible ventures in all of human history, to sail right off the edge of the known map and, well, literally redraw the entire planet. This is the story of that amazing and often brutal race.
So you gotta ask, how on earth did they pull it off? What was it that fueled this relentless drive for discovery? And maybe most importantly, what was the real cost of this global scramble? Let's get into it.
So, what kicked off this massive global race? While a sense of adventure was definitely part of it, the main driver really came down to wealth. European powers were desperate to find new ways to get their hands on precious goods. Gold, silver, and especially spices like pepper and cloves, which back then were literally worth more than their weight in gold.
And this whole period, running roughly from the 1400s to the 1600s, is what we now call the Age of Discovery. The mission at the start seemed pretty simple: find new trading routes. But what ended up happening was a complete transformation of the world as they knew it, with explorers mapping brand new lands and running into civilizations they never knew existed.
Okay, so the first nation to really go all in on this whole thing was Portugal. And they didn't just sail blindly into the ocean. No, they had a really methodical, step-by-step strategy, a slow, careful push right down the coast of Africa.
Their progress was super patient and calculated. It all started way back in 1419 with the discovery of some nearby islands. Then, for the next 100 years or so, Portuguese sailors just meticulously mapped the West African coast until, bam! Vasco da Gama finally rounded the continent's southern tip. That was the breakthrough. It opened up a direct sea route to India and laid the foundation for a massive trading empire.
And Portugal's strategy was really unique. See, they weren't really focused on conquering huge chunks of land. Their goal was all about controlling trade. By setting up a whole network of coastal trading posts across Africa and Asia, they built this powerful system that just funneled incredible amounts of wealth right back to Lisbon.
But while Portugal was making all these careful moves south and east, their biggest rival, Spain, was watching and getting pretty anxious. With the African route totally dominated by the Portuguese, the Spanish decided to make a huge, high-stakes gamble on a completely different idea.
You really couldn't have two more different strategies. Portugal's plan was to go east with a focus on trade. Spain decided on a really bold move: sail west, straight across the Atlantic. And that decision put Spain on a totally different path, not of trade, but of conquest.
Their champion for this idea? A guy named Christopher Columbus. He sailed west, absolutely convinced he could find a shortcut to Asia. So when he landed in the Americas, he thought he'd done it. It was only later that Spain realized they hadn't found a new trade route, they had stumbled upon an entire new world, and their goal immediately shifted to conquest.
And if you want to understand the sheer scale of Spain's ambition, get this. Just a couple of decades later, Ferdinand Magellan's fleet became the very first to successfully sail all the way around the entire globe. I mean, what an incredible achievement. It totally cemented Spain's status as a global power, with this huge, growing empire in the Americas.
So for a while, it was basically the Spain and Portugal show. They dominated the globe. But all that immense wealth and power, well, it was bound to attract some attention. By the 17th century, new challengers started showing up, and they were eager to get their own piece of the pie. The race was about to get a lot more crowded.
Three big Northern European powers, Britain, France, and the Netherlands, were the new contenders. They saw the unbelievable riches flowing into Spain and Portugal and thought, we want some of that. So they started building their own fleets to compete for colonies and trade routes all over the world.
Of course, this new competition sparked centuries of conflict. By the mid-1700s, after a bunch of major wars, Britain had pretty much come out on top against its rivals, France and the Netherlands. Now, Spain still had the world's biggest empire, but the British Empire was now the second global superpower, controlling huge territories in North America, India, and basically ruling the seas.
So after 200 years of non-stop competition, exploration, and conquest, the world was just completely changed. The consequences of this era were massive, they were complex, and you can still feel the echoes of them today.
The lasting effects were just profound. Spain got incredibly rich from Latin American silver. The Dutch came in and eventually weakened Portugal's hold on trade. And, tragically, this era fueled the horrific transatlantic slave trade, which saw millions of Africans forcibly taken to the Americas to work in the new colonies. And of course, it was the beginning of the massive global empires of Britain, France, and the Netherlands.
And this whole process of exploring and mapping just kept going, well into the 18th century. Captain James Cook's voyages added the last big pieces to the European world map when he claimed New Zealand and Australia for Britain, basically completing the picture that had started being sketched out centuries earlier.
So in the end, the Age of Discovery connected our world. It created the very first truly global networks of trade and culture. But this new, interconnected world was built on a foundation of conflict, conquest, and exploitation. And that leaves us with a really big question. Who truly paid the price for redrawing the map?